So thanks everybody for coming back to part two of Driving Out Fear. We've got Urishanie and Gary and Corey back to continue the discussion that we started the other day. So thanks for tuning in. And with that, we'll just jump right in. Corey, what examples are there of psychological safety failures within a business?
I think there's daily examples in organizations that we almost don't notice, we don't see, because we don't see what we don't see. If I can use the Rumsfeld principle, we don't know what we don't know. But there are dramatic examples that came out in catastrophic events. If you look at, and I've spent a lifetime delving into these catastrophic events, but not to to find out what they've done wrong and how this could have been done better. It's more about what are the key fundamental things in that organization that was underpinning this mistake, this catastrophic event. And if you look at the typical ones, the great ones that we all know about, BP Texas Refinery had a massive focus on targets, improvement. People don't speak up in that environment. There's classic examples of Nokia, how they failed against iPhone and with in terms of software development, because their managements were too fearful to expose their deficiencies in their software. A classic example is actually many years ago, the Ford Pinto was a car that was produced to compete with the Japanese cars by Ford, and the gas tank was just behind the axle, and there was a small space between the axle and the gas tank. So if the car gets crashed from behind, the gas tank explodes. And they had multiple accidents where there was people got killed in accidents because of the design. But no one wanted to tell the big boss, I think it was Lee Iacocca at the time, that hey, this car is not that great, because he had so much weighing on this car. So they were actually looking at, this may sound very callous, they were actually looking at what is the cost of insurance payout, the cost of reparations, damage that they have to pay out to customers who bought a car and had accidents, as against having to redesign the car. And they decided, no, it's cheaper to just pay out the compensation and not to redesign the car. And that information was withheld. And I call this risk secrecy. And almost everything that I've seen in safety, in big disasters, is preceded by this risk secrecy. Like, for instance, Volkswagen. Gary mentioned Volkswagen or mentioned greenwashing. Volkswagen, how they cheated with their software program to not measure gases when the car is on the road. The cars would exceed the gas limits, the limitations that were set by the government when it's on the road. But in the test center, when it's only two-wheel drive, they would meet it. Now, why didn't they know about it? Well, this happened in a pocket in the organization, and Volkswagen didn't know about this. The top people, they claim, and it had a massive impact on the organization. So this is the kind of thing, and there's an equivalent in safety that I call safe washing. And if you, a quick reference to it, there's many examples of how organizations are hiding accidents. Modified work here, putting people on light duties. I don't want to go there, but there's even organizations that have been hiding fatal accidents. And a classic example that I came across is an organization that did construction work in the Middle East. And there would be many fatalities on the job there. These workers would come from India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. And when they have a fatal accident, they would charter a jet under a different company's name to fly to the organization, to the site, to the country, and take the body back to Bangladesh or India, where the worker is from. And then they report the accident in that country. And it's not part of their accidents. We are fatal free. They're a huge construction organization. Now, can you imagine how devious this is? And this is what is happening, because if that construction company does not have a good safety record, the next client won't use them. Because the first thing companies ask a construction company, show us your safety record. So what do? They show them a safety record. And that is unfortunately part and parcel of when circumstances like this. And you know, there's been a claim about something that Einstein said, but it wasn't Einstein, I believe it was some other sociologist, but it was allocated to Einstein, said that not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that is counted counts. And this is what happens in the world of safety. We count the wrong things. A last quick example, a classic one, everybody's seen the movie, so you'll know what I'm talking about, the Deepwater Horizon with Mark Wahlberg in. What is happening in the movie is true. The drilling organization Transocean claimed that they've worked for 7 years without an accident to any of the workers. 7 years on an oil rig. It's impossible. There's no ways you can work 7 years without a scratch on anybody. And yet, they were being given an award by the management of BP, who were on the rig that night, to give them this major award of working 7 years without an injury. Now, clearly, the management had to know that this is a lie. This is safe washing. So what did they do? They pretended to believe them. And they gave them the award, and that's the night when the fire started. That's safe washing, and that is what the failure of psychological safety can do, because people are dead scared, excuse the pun, dead scared to be open and honest about things that happen in the organization.
Yeah, perhaps Corey, if I can just make a comment, and I think Scott also, please feel free to edit this if it's not going to add value. In fact, today I actually had a case where we had one of our sites that approached me and said, yeah, look, we've had an incident, but now or we've had an event rather, but we didn't know whether to actually class this as an HPI or as an HPH, because we're concerned if it's classed as an HPI, it's seen as a much more visible thing and something which is a bit negative. We would rather want to look at having it classed as an HPH, where it then gets classed as a much larger tally. So they had the comfort to want to report, but they were potentially wanting to under report it. But the response that I've actually taken is, you know, if you take this incident, what do we actually want to do with it? We actually want to ensure that we learn from it. So whether it gets reported as an HPI or as an HPH, is that going to change the way that we actually learn from the incidents? And I think one also needs to look at, you know, at when people have had that fear of reporting, how do you actually change that or turn that around into something positive?
Right. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
good.
Scott, the more certainty you create around how you will manage investigations, the better. And one of the tools that we have is what is referred to as the accountability framework. And the accountability framework we've managed ground up, where we look at whether it is to incentivize people or to discipline people. We take them through the accountability framework. And this accountability framework is managed similarly across all levels of the business. So there's a level of certainty that's created.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. And so Corey, kind of looping back around, doesn't psychological safety subdue high performance and achievement within an organization?
Yeah, we certainly have alluded to this in different ways. What we said earlier on in terms of what is this? What do we want from psychological safety? Do we want people to not take risks? And yes, we don't. Or do we want people then also not to innovate? No, we do. And unfortunately, there's a counterbalance. It's almost like an incompatibility of thinking, that it's hard to think how can we innovate in an organization, yet the quality department wants us to innovate. Yet the safety department says to us, you stick to every rule. You don't move outside of it, because we know that could be an accident. And so people are almost caught between two worlds.
Right.
And there's a basketball player who once said, he said, I've missed 9,000 shots in my career. And I've lost 300 games. 26 times he said, I was trusted to do the final winning shot and I missed. And his words were, I have failed over and over and over in my life. And that's why I succeeded. And that was Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And if you think about just what he's saying there, I have been in a position where I had learned so much through my failures that I could be the best in the world. And if you think about, another classic example is the company 3M in the 80s. You know, that company is absolutely built on innovation. And then the CEO was replaced by a guy with the name of James McNerney, who was one of the CEOs or executives under Jack Welch in General Electric. And he came to 3M and he introduced Six Sigma, operational efficiencies and improvements. And he nearly destroyed the organization. He nearly got them bankrupt by putting in demands for efficiency on an organization that's differently wired. It comes back to this thing about what is our DNA? What do we want to achieve in our organization? And how do we fathom, how do we create a psychological safety model that fits with our safety, with our organization's DNA? That is far more important than let's implement psychological safety. And for that reason, I prefer not, and maybe I can mention that later, how we define psychological safety in SafeMap.
Yeah. Well, and that ties into my next question for Urishanie about how do you measure psychological safety?
Sure. And we've been speaking a lot about what is psychological safety.
Yeah.
And I think one of the areas that keeps coming up around psychological safety is the speak up. And we need to say, what is that proxy for speak up? And another area that we've been hearing a lot of in this conversation is the leading metrics. So for us, that proxy for speak up is our HPHs, the high potential hazards reporting. And we do data analytics on that reporting. So the first thing we look at is what could potentially be hidden.
Right.
And those hidden ones are really somebody alone in the middle of the night, taking time off to report. Because as Gary said, it's not about what went wrong. It's about how can I learn and share it as quickly as possible with my colleagues so that we eliminate this risk. So we look at hidables and we benchmark hidables incidents to non-hidables, in terms of best class. The second thing that we look at is those HPHs as a ratio of the actual incidents, the high potential incidents. And we've come up with a benchmark target within De Beers to say, let's make sure that we maintain it above 10. And again, it gives us a proxy of people's ability to speak up. And then the last one, which we find even more intriguing, is where people are stepping up into that citizenship inherent, where we keep each other safe. So you'll find an individual on site observing an operator that had a micro sleep. He lost control, he came back into control. And this individual speaks up to say, actually, that was an HPH. Let's look at what we can learn. And he's speaking up despite the fact that it wasn't him, it was his colleague. So again, it's this trust that his colleague and him have to say, let's learn and we can continue to work together. So that's really what we look at. It's those insights that are coming through from HPH. And I know we're going to spend time, Corey, talking about Safe Sentry, the reporting that's coming through from Safe Sentry. But what we also do is we look at the inherent risks as systemic risks, and we look at those cognitive risks where people are speaking up. I actually don't believe that I understood the risk. I overlooked it. I underestimated it. So we can see in the early days of Safe Sentry, those cognitive risks are high. again, showing a high level of psychological safety for people to report these hazards out, learn from it. And then they become balanced. And then we start to see, actually, we've got a lot to do in terms of managing those systemic risks. So I think, again, it's about data insights. It's about encouraging and it's about empowering people and sharing with them the feedback that is coming through from these reports so that we can move to this culture of Inerrant, where safety is a way of life.
Right. And Corey, maybe you can touch on it. There's a term that's been bouncing around, just culture, and maybe you can explain that and talk a little bit about the difference between just culture and psychological safety.
Well, there's an overlap, I guess, in the two. Just culture is probably what you need in an organization to achieve psychological safety. If I can, one aspect that you can need of it to create that, and I think that's about as basic as I can answer that. And which brings me to this point of the term psychological safety. Because it's linked to safe, it's linked to the definitions of safe. And what is the definition of safe? And immediately we come back to the absence of accidents, the absence of events, the absence of incidents. And so that's why I'm uncomfortable with the term, but it's such a widely used term now that we have to live with that. But we have, in our work with clients, started to redefine it in a different term. So our definition of safe in SafeMap, and that's what we offer our clients, is that safety is the readiness to respond to risk relentlessly. And that term is very, very meaningful. You know, readiness, what does that mean at operational, tactical, strategic level of the organization? Respond, what does that mean? Tactical, operational, strategic. What is the definition of risk at the various levels? And what is the definition of relentlessly? And so what we've done with the concept of psychological safety is we've turned it around and named it psychological readiness. So the psychological readiness index. And the model that I've always worked with is not a new model, and it precedes Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety, and that's the model of James Reason, where he talked about types of culture. And the types of culture that he talked about is an informed culture, a just culture, a learning culture, a flexible culture, and reporting culture. So these are 5 types, and now we've added 2 types of culture to that. To start off with, a trusting culture in the organization where management has credibility, supervisor have credibility, visibility. And then the other one we added in was the care culture, care index, where people truly feel that this company care about us as employees and we are being supported in our team. So those are the 2 prerequisites, I would say. And then we measure through culture surveys those 2 indices, and we also measure how informed people are in the organization, how fair do they think the disciplinary processes are, what's their willingness to report, how much flexibility do they have in the workplace to work. And then in terms of learning, not learning from accidents, not learning from incidents, that's the last place you want to learn from. But to learn from risk, learn from identified risks, how we are being consulted on a day-to-day basis. And so that kind of definition gives you a full picture of how you create, how you measure psychological readiness in an organization, and how you can actually optimize that.
And so Gary, what impacts on just culture the most?
I think, Scott, and to understand what impacts the most on just culture, we need to understand just and equitable. We were all the same. So and what we found in our application or in our use of just culture is basically having a culture where everybody is considered equal. So if you have a set of agreed behaviors, you have one set of agreed behaviors. Those apply to managers, to leaders, to supervisors, to the front line. We have an accountability framework. It's an agreed framework, and that gets applied right across to leaders, to managers, to supervisors, to the front line. We don't have two different sets of rules. It's also knowing that and that if you do report something and that you'll be and that the report would be looked at in terms of the just culture, you're not going to be punished for reporting something. And I think the other thing also with just culture is that is that just implies that it's equitable and it's balanced. So so there must be a so-called negative side for consequences, but there's also that and the positive side for something that gets done really well, and that must basically be applied in an equitable manner for a just culture to work.
Can you describe a practical system which addresses psychological safety? And I know we touched on that safe century, so maybe you can dive into that.
Sure. Yeah, one of the criticisms of the so-called safety 2, or the new view of safety 2, new view safety, is that there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of discussions and presentations and books around psychological safety, drive out fear, what needs to be done. But there is very little in terms of actual practical on-the-ground systems, what the practitioner can put their hands on. And so De Beers has got a division called Deming, and it's an incredibly interesting, fascinating organization. They have 6-7 large vessels that harvest diamonds from the seabed off the coast of Namibia. Diamonds have been pushed over from the diamond fields with a big river for millions of years. And so this is a very complex operation. They have a massive vacuum suction pump underneath the ship that stirs up the seabed, just lifts it up, and the diamonds are being sucked up into the ship and processed. Incredibly dangerous. Helicopters fly in regularly. People live there. 120 people live on and Gary knows all about this. He has been part and parcel of this as a naval architect. So in that environment, and it's hierarchical, it's like almost semi-military environment. So what has happened there? The safe century system is a very, very basic approach. And here's what happens. Once a day on a vessel, and let's say there's 100 people on the vessel, or there's a couple of departments, 1 or 2 people on the day is the appointed safe sentry for the day. So this person is going to go through a series of little actions that takes him or her maybe half an hour or an hour twice a day. They go over to meet up with other employees where work is being performed, and they engage with this other employee, and the 2 or 3 of them have a discussion, and we train them in a tool that we call the 6Y tool. How do we classify risk engagement: overlooked, underestimated, rewarded, balanced, inherent, and tolerated risks. And they look at their environment and they identify, and the focus is on serious risks. Is there a risk here that we overlook? Is there a risk here we underestimate? Simple, but very powerful. Then there's a little app on a tablet, and they input the data, they take a photo, and they record what they've seen, and they do a little bit of analysis, and this is then collated, and at the end of the day, it's handed over to the supervisor. And the supervisor have a discussion with them, and this data is all sucked up into a database, and from there, they can take action, they can follow through, and also we do some really amazing analysis of trends and various ratios and failures of critical controls and so on. So that's the system that is called Safeopedia. So what it does is it actually addresses psychological safety. It enables the person to speak up. The person is now authorized to speak up. And this is a very critical point in speaking up, in allowing psychological safety, is the level to which people feel authorized, not obligated. Everybody's obligated. But to what extent am I authorized to speak up now? And that makes a huge difference. And so we have a lot of these activities on the ships every day. And we've now, I think the last count, over 800 fatal, serious injury or catastrophic risks had been identified, followed up with, and to this day, not one single repeat. It's different things I see all the time. And as Gary said earlier on, it is fascinating, the stuff they see and come back with. That's a practical system that enables people.
So Urishanie, why does it work?
I mean, in terms of, is it working? You've heard the passion that comes through from Corey. And I witness it every week, every month, every 3 months, when Corey presents to the team and people see the data analytics and that ha-ha moment where people see an area that they've overlooked and they've been working with this for many years and they didn't identify it. And they say, wow, we're now capacitated and we can learn from each other. Simple things like, for example, working at heights. They've always changed the light bulb, but suddenly, because we've created the awareness and the desire to improve, people are saying, this is not safe anymore. I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm not going to overlook it. I'm going to systemically change it. And the people that listen to Corey, who's sharing these reporting, are shifting. And we see those shifts in terms of let's be compliant, to let's be citizens, to let's all of us keep each other safe. So I think for me, it's exciting. It's really exciting to listen to the GM who's completely open, who should know his site. I mean, he only has a few mines. Namdeb, for example, only has a few mines. So he should know the condition of his plant. And suddenly he sees, actually, this is an aging infrastructure that could injure somebody because of loose components. And he says, wow, to have these reports come through to me and to add value to the work that I'm doing is just incredible. The amount of time that I'm saving, because people are not only identifying, but they take ownership to fix.
Right.
And I think, in terms of teams pulling together, they're sparking fresh things in terms of how do we move up the hierarchy of controls. And we find that even labor unions are coming to the party to say, let's listen to what you're saying. Actually, this is an improvement. I want this for my people. And we have buy-in. So we have teams of people that are all shifting. So for me, as a group, head of safety, sustainable development, risk, it's exciting because we are identifying those hazards. We're marking those that are HPH that are coming from the Safe Century reports. We're finding solutions. We are eliminating risks. We are capacitating people, and we're doing it all through the values of our lens. So we're cultivating, put safety first. We care. People know we're doing this because we care. So for me, it's really exciting to watch this team grow and for them to build trust together. And we're doing it through Safe Century.
Great.
Maybe what I can do, Scott, is to just play you 2 audio clips of what people have reported from the system. Let me share. So this is a Safe Century's response to the whole thing.
Yeah, I think people should be encouraged to do the Safe Century because at first it looked like it's a hard work. It's maybe complicated, but it's really very simple.
And so this is how they experience the system. Now here's the response of a supervisor on since they deployed the safe sentry system?
When talking regarding safety matters, people seem to be more open since the Safe Sentry initiative started, which is a good thing because now you hear the truth, not what you want to hear.
I think that will really add value to what Urishanie has just said.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as the supervisor said there, now you hear the truth, not what you want to hear. And for me, that's also part of the epitome of that feeling safe and that the psychological safety, or as we say, you always safe to be the strongest link and to basically tell the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And and following up on that, Gary, it's great to have a system up, but you know, implementing it, you know, taking it out to the frontline workers is always the change management is always one of the more challenging issues. So how do you install a system like this, or how do you go about implementing a system like this?
Well, the way you and the way you don't go about doing it is you come in guns blazing and you say, here's a system that was invented in North America. You will install it like this. If you do it like that, it's going to fail. So the way that you actually do it, to our mind, really, and the approach that we've taken with our pioneering brilliant safety, of which Safe Sentry forms a part of that, really is a co-created constructive engagement approach. You know, the foundation of that approach is essentially top down, where your executive management buys in. They're the leaders that have the vision, set the strategy, and then so they do that. You then basically enroll your middle management, your supervisors. You then onboard your the rest of your frontline workers, your company. How you go about doing that is you actually get down and you form those emotional connections. It's basically based on a lot of storytelling. It's based on narratives, and giving people the tools and the techniques to be and to be effective safety leaders, or as we say, and Corey's been instrumental in helping us on this journey. You train people right throughout the organization to be in the line of and to basically become brilliant and to become brilliant safety leaders. So as we say, we are pioneering brilliant safety leadership. We want brilliant safety leaders, and you basically do that, and that means to essentially move people to action. That engagement filters down, and you have your small group in engagements, but really key to it, Scott, is your leadership. Leaders need to be open. Leaders need to be vulnerable at all stages. They have to basically reinforce and that notion that there is no fear in the organization to report and to be authentic.
Yeah, and I'm envisioning, you know, as managers, as supervisors, you know, who do you select for that first tour of Safe Sentry? You know, you want to pick an employee or employees that might be leaders in their own capacity, the first ones to speak up and report an HPH and know that there won't be any negative repercussions. So I can
yeah. But maybe just to correct you with one thing, Scott, is that we're not just focusing on in employees. We're actually focusing on everybody. To us, we don't score less points if we if we hurt an employee versus hurting a contractor. People are people, whether they employees or the contractors. We want everybody that comes onto our site to be safe, to be a safety leader, to be able to and to be able to actually get the same tools, techniques, training, and the same opportunities, be it being safety being safe sentries, being able to actually speak up, and so on.
Great. So maybe to wrap up the conversation today, we can just go around and we'll start with Urishanie and just talk about practical guidance on how to drive out fear within an organization.
Yep. Thanks for that question, Scott. And I think for us, one practical tool has certainly been Safe Sentry. We've empowered people at the front line. And as Gary said, it's all our people to be able to understand risk, be risk aware, understand risk is dynamic. Yes, you come to work and the environment may not have changed. People have been working in the mining industry for many years, but we emphasize risk is dynamic. So Safe Sentry is a brilliant tool. Another tool that we are using specifically to look at those underlying psychological issues is what we refer to as I am safe. And it really talks to all of the illnesses, your medication that you're under. We're getting people to start talking about those deeper issues in a very comfortable environment. Am I fatigued? You might have a mum who's a haul truck driver. And at the startup of a meeting, we go through this I am safe. And she says, actually, I'm a little worried because my baby didn't sleep last night and I might be a bit fatigued. And it's an environment where she feels safe to speak up about it. We have E, which is emotional. What's weighing me down emotionally? I'm worried. My dad is in hospital. I need to call on him. So please excuse me if you see me on the phone. So we embrace the I am safe philosophy. We've integrated it into a number of our meetings as a practical tool that people can start talking about how can they feel more psychologically safe. And I think also in terms of we have Global Safety Days. The theme for Global Safety Day was psychological safety. And we share with the leaders, be vulnerable. Think of a time where you felt psychologically safe and an environment where you did not feel psychologically safe, and share that with your team. Let them open up about what's making them feel psychologically safe and unsafe. And suddenly you find that these vulnerabilities are pulling you closer. So those are some of the tools that we use, Scott.
Great. Gary, did you want to add to that?
Yeah. I think, Scott, also to add to that, is that it's important that for everybody, the intent of wanting people to feel psychological safe, or people not wanting to feel fear, is there. But it's extremely important that right from the top down, that your actions match that in intent, and it's extremely important, and that you actually feel free to and to basically walk the talk, and that you show and that you walk the talk. And I think for me also, one of the issues that I initially battled with is that certainly within our group and our main shareholder, we are one of the few BUs that's really embraced this transformational approach to safety. And every time that we hear the term zero harm get spoken in the various halls and presentations, personally I actually cringe. What we want to do is make a statement. We don't believe in zero harm. What we believe in is beyond zero, and it's having that vision, and making sure that everything that you do is aligned to going and to basically getting to that vision. is basically what is needed in order to succeed.
Great, thank you, Gary. I'll turn it over to Corey for maybe some closing remarks or guidance on how to drive fear out of an organization.
Yeah, if I can latch on to what Gary just said there, the concept of zero harm, zero accidents, that introduces fear in the organization, because every time there's an accident, you fail the goal, you fail management, you fail the expectations, and the way that we define safety is zero isn't safe. Zero is not the ultimate level of capability. If we see that there are hundreds and hundreds of serious injury risks sitting in an organization that has close to zero accident performance, then we know we've got a long way to go. And therefore, this whole idea of readiness to respond to risk relentlessly is in my mind the right approach. That's beyond zero. And so first practical guideline from my side is how do we measure safety? Is how do we measure what metrics do we put in place into the organization? We know that what gets measured gets done. We also know that what's get measured in safety gets fudged in order to get the numbers right. Sometimes in any type of environment, we have to get the metrics right because that will drive the organization. The second thing is in terms of tools. The one thing that I really always focused on and prided ourselves in SafeMap is that we practitioners. We develop concepts and ideas. We take what's available from the best thinkers like Deming, and in the world of safety, outside the world of safety, we've picked up ideas from Netflix to use in safety. And we created a program called Risk Delta with that idea. But the focus is on actual methods, not just ideas, methods of making it happen. And with that, we have a range of tools. We have a culture survey that we call Prisma, which is measuring one of the metrics, is one of the cultural metrics. And then we have a series of interventions that we offer to clients. And I want to come back to Albert Einstein, who said, the world we're living in is a product of our thinking. And the only way we can change that world is if we change our thinking. And that's what our interventions are aimed at. We have a program called Safe Exec, Safe Leader, that all go towards this idea of deep safe. And then we have programs for the supervisory level. We call them Safe Crews, and for the operational level called Safe Minds. But it's all about how do we change our thinking, but in practical methods that you can, so like the Safe Sentry, that you can actually achieve these things in a very constructive way. So that's really, for me, is how much do we actually achieve on the ground and instead of talking about it.
Great. And we'll include everybody's LinkedIn coordinates in the links below. So if people want to reach out and connect and maybe ask some questions, we'll make sure that they can get a hold of you on LinkedIn. This was a fascinating discussion. Really, my honor to host, and thank you so much for your time today. Very generous, and all of your insights. And I know everyone will find this fascinating and want to dive deeper into the driving out fear within their organizations. So thank you so much.